Hi, everyone, and thank you, Black Blockchain Summit, for the invite back. I remember speaking at the very first event over in DC itself, and now it's great to be back. Unfortunately, I'm doing it virtually. I'm a little bit too far away, out in the woods. But here's a presentation on Bitcoin's value proposition and why Bitcoin is so important to our society going into the future. Let me go ahead and start the screen share, so everyone should be seeing that now. And we'll begin. My name is Tong Vase. I have been in this space for almost a decade now, and feels like yesterday. And I mostly talk about finance, economics, but also explaining what Bitcoin is. You can find my YouTube channel and all over other social media uh, as I travel around the world doing presentations like this. So let's talk about Bitcoin. We have a lot of slides to cover. We have a lot of history of Bitcoin to cover and only 20 minutes to do it. I'm not going to talk much about the early days of the creation of Bitcoin, but that is the white paper. And strongly recommend everyone go ahead and read that. Now, when Bitcoin first started in 2009, 2010, it did not have much of a value. Its first value came in at around at the end of 2010, when it was suggested that a company like WikiLeaks should maybe accept Bitcoin for donations, because WikiLeaks was publishing information on the US military that the US government didn't like, and they wanted to shut them down. So they got cut off from all types of funding: Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, all donations. And even Satoshi came out saying that maybe WikiLeaks shouldn't do it because it would cause Bitcoin some unnecessary attention. And that's exactly what happened. But about 6 months later, Silk Road, a company that, or a website that was letting people buy whatever they wanted from the internet, started uh, gaining popularity. And once again, people have heard about Bitcoin, leading to a senator from New York named Chuck Schumer going on TV and basically advertising Silk Road and Bitcoin in a 30-second commercial that today is really, really impressive going back, how he was able to explain about Bitcoin's use in order to purchase drugs and other things on Silk Road. Silk Road was eventually shut down, but before that happened, what I feel is the most critical event in Bitcoin's history took place. And that was in 2013 in a European country called Cyprus. Cyprus had a banking problem. And what they decided to do was to bail in the banks. Everyone that had money in a Cyprus bank lost 50% of that money, and it was used to bail in the bank. So those that had over 100,000 euros lost 50% of their wealth. So if you had 200,000 euros, suddenly you lost about 50,000 euros. And this is when I started taking Bitcoin very, very seriously. I was very interested in how can you protect your money? And this is when I learned that your money is not even safe at a bank. Forget inflation, forget other stuff, but the government can just come and take your money because they can. And that sent me personally down a rabbit hole of, well, how often does the government confiscate money? And around that time, I found this article, and I'm not able to find an update to this article, and it's now been about 6, 7 years, that in 2014, for the first time in American history, the government has confiscated and stolen more wealth from people than criminals have. So in 2014, the concept is civil asset forfeiture, where the government just says your money committed the crime and we will just take the money. And they confiscated $5 billion worth of wealth from Americans, something that robbers had stolen less than 4 billion during that year. Now, for some reason, these statistics aren't really be kept track anymore, but I think this is only going up. However, your Bitcoin is only unconfiscatable if it's properly protected. And in 2014, in 2013, October 2013, when Silk Road got shut down, the government was able to confiscate 144,000 Bitcoin because it wasn't properly protected. The government then sold most of that Bitcoin in 2014 and 2015, but had they held it a few more years, that fortune that they sold for 48 million would have been worth over $2 billion. So Bitcoin does have a tendency to rise over time. Once again, this is the history of Bitcoin up to 2018, where you see on the screen right now. And we just went through the first half of Bitcoin's life cycle. And then the big bubble happened in 2013, taking Bitcoin to a price of $1,200. Now, what critical events took place after that? Well, for me personally, the most critical event that took place that once again shows the importance of Bitcoin was the Greek banking crisis of 2015. Similar to the Cyprus bank crisis, the government was not able to bail in the banks like they did in Cyprus, which is a much smaller country. But in Greece, they basically prevented people from taking their own money out of the bank. So it didn't matter how much money you had in the bank, the government limited you to 60 euros per day. It was pretty much equivalent to about $65, $70 per day that a person can withdraw from their bank account, no matter how much money they had in the bank account. And that went on for several weeks. After that, they decided to allow people to withdraw 420 euros. But that was their limit for the entire week. So that suddenly became a weekly limit on that suddenly became a weekly limit on the amount of money a person could withdraw from the bank. So what happened on that Monday morning? Well, like what usually happens, the moment people realized that they could finally withdraw money out of their bank, it didn't matter that it was only 400 euro. They tried taking the entire 400 euros out of the bank. So this was what happened in Greece in 2015, where everyone just rushed to the ATM to withdraw their full allowance of 400 euros. And other than that picture being in color, we've seen these kinds of bank runs throughout history. Going back to New York in 1907, one of the biggest bank runs in American history that led to the creation of the Federal Reserve. The pictures in the middle is those pictures are during the Great Depression, and you can see how in 1934 there was another bank run. Here is Germany over here in the middle in the upper left, where people were burning money for heat because it was a better use for the money. That's how weak the currency got. And again, more recently in 2007, many people have heard about the Zimbabwe hyperinflation, and more recently, similar things in Venezuela, and right now happening in countries like Argentina. And these bank runs happen all the time. So this is the danger of entrusting the banking system. Besides entrusting the banking system and the government to maintain your currency, other major things involving confiscation have taken place throughout history. The most famous one is the United States by FDR in 1933, where he decided to confiscate all the gold being held by U.S. citizens inside the banks. This created another big scare of the banking system, and this was punishable by 10 years in prison. There's a really good book that I would recommend called The Bitcoin Standard. Saifedean explains this very nicely about what makes hard money and the reason for using gold to back currency to begin with, and how Bitcoin is this next transition. I'll leave the slides here, so if anybody watching it, and I'm sure the video will be out, you can go ahead and pause and you can read the parts that have been highlighted. This presentation continues to get longer and longer as time goes on. I do it maybe once or twice a year, and initially started back in 2015. So now there's a lot more history to go through, so I will do it quickly as well. 2017 led to a lot of issues with creating a bigger block size. There's a great book on that called The Block Size Wars that talks about how Bitcoin can scale. 2018, 2019, no critical financial events took place during that time. Bitcoin did go through its bear market, but then some very interesting things happened around COVID. With the COVID situation in 2020 and a stock market and a Bitcoin crash, the government went on a massive printing spree where 23% of all US dollars managed to be printed in just a single year with 2020 because the government forced everyone to not to work and somehow the economy had to run. So there was massive amount of printing going on in 2020 and the current debt situation is not looking very good. In 2021, companies started acquiring Bitcoin in order to hold that instead of holding cash. MicroStrategy was one of the first to lead the way. So did Tesla. The current numbers look a little bit different. MicroStrategy has acquired a lot more Bitcoin, almost doubled the Bitcoin that they had before. And Tesla, on the other hand, has sold 75% of their Bitcoin. So we'll see which way these companies are going to go further. Are they going to acquire more or are they going to deleverage? Pretty sure MicroStrategy is not looking to acquire any less. Countries are starting to get into Bitcoin. We have El Salvador that has now announced that Bitcoin is going to be its legal tender. But now that the price has been down, not many countries have been following suit. But here come the interesting things over the last 2 years. More on confiscation. Trudeau and Canada started shutting down bank accounts of those that were donating to political causes that they did not like. 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, lots of wealth of Russian private citizens was confiscated all around the world. Russia itself was banned from the global international financial system, and its gold got frozen and confiscated in some of the central banks around the world. And more recently, just last month, a British politician has been removed from banking services because of his political views as a very, very popular politician. So the financial system has become political. So let's quickly summarize everything, and then I'll have 5 minutes to talk about where things are going. Bitcoin's most important property is the fact that it's unconfiscatable, based on a bunch of examples I've already provided. Its second most important property for me is the fact that it's uncensorable and you can move wealth anywhere you like. And unlike the fiat system, you can't just print more Bitcoin. Over 90% of Bitcoin has already been created, and only about 8% is still yet to be found and released. Satoshi realized it when he released Bitcoin from the beginning. So the nature of Bitcoin is that the moment it was originally released, it was basically written in stone. Now, where is Bitcoin greatly improving? Well, scalability and fungibility. When I made this presentation for the first time in 2015, the concept of Lightning Network didn't exist. There was lots of scaling concerns, and people already knew how Bitcoin was not very private. Today, all of that is changing. The Lightning Network is scaling Bitcoin, and the latest in using of Taproot and other utility is creating more fungibility for Bitcoin. I'm not going to get into these graphics a lot, but Bitcoin is certainly becoming more scalable, and the use of the Lightning Network is having an incredible effect. Now, where is Bitcoin still struggling? Well, it's struggling with price volatility and coin security. Again, I'm going to go through these charts very quickly. Bitcoin is the most volatile known asset, but when you adjust it for how much value it has gained over the years, it's not the riskiest asset, and risk-adjusted volatility on Bitcoin is still very, very good. Here's a historical list of all hyperinflations. This is in the that was in 20th century. And now we're in the 21st century, and you can see how hyperinflations and inflations are still happening very, very strong. Inflation is still happening. Inflation is not as bad as it was a year ago when this graphic was made, but many countries are still struggling with high inflation, including the UK, to a lesser extent the US, and other countries as well. And then there are major single-day events that make stable currencies unstable. Like when the Brexit vote happened, the pound moved 10% in a single day, and when the Swiss peg broke against the euro, it moved 33% in a single day. The biggest challenge, however, is securing your Bitcoin. All right, with 5 minutes to go, I want to talk about where we are going into the future and what catalysts are likely to make Bitcoin price spike incredibly quickly in a very short time. My biggest catalyst would be the breakup of the European common currency into its components that it had prior to the year 2000. That is still my biggest concern for Europe, but it's great for Bitcoin because as this is happening, many of the countries and the people in those countries are not going to trust the currency that's coming in, and they're going to rush into Bitcoin. Unfortunately, this graphic doesn't seem to be focusing very well, but it's an article written by Harvard Business Review on why the governments want to eliminate cash. I'll try to update this graphic in the presentation so you can see it, but there are 3 reasons the governments want to eliminate cash. They want to set any monetary policy they like, including negative interest rates. They don't want ever to have bank runs again. There is nothing to withdraw from an ATM if there is no ATM, if there is no cash. And every government believes that the reason why they haven't created a utopia is because everyone is cheating on their taxes, which would be a lot harder to do if there is no cash. Here are other examples throughout the last 5 years of how governments are trying to eliminate that cash. In France, you can't buy anything with cash for over 1,000 euros. Germany is trying to eliminate collector's market, so you wouldn't even be able to put your wealth into precious art or bottles of wine. They would want to tax you on that. In America, they would like to tax you on capital gains, unrealized capital gains, so that if the stocks you're holding went up in value, they will tax you whether you sold the stock or not. And there's a Biden proposal that would allow the IRS to track accounts and every transaction of $600. That's coming as well. Louisiana passed a law that already stated that you can't sell like your used bicycle for cash. You have to accept a check. This is more recent lists of which countries have already entered and are holding Bitcoin. The Bulgaria, this was not true. I never believed it. I think people are, I think this is now 0. They never had that much. They claimed they confiscated it, but apparently they did not. But El Salvador is collecting more Bitcoin. And finally, this move to eliminate Russia from SWIFT is going to lead to lots of big countries not trusting the US financial system anymore. And this is leading to a new alternative to SWIFT with the BRICS, Russia, China, India, Brazil, South Africa as well, and several other countries will be using other currencies than the US dollar. Another huge issue that will lead to people trusting Bitcoin is people's distrust in the US political system. Polls are showing that 70% of Republicans did not trust the last election. And on a scale of which professions people distrust the most, senators and congressmen are slightly above used car salesmen, which still ranks the lowest. And that's becoming an issue. Another concern is the potential split of the United States, because the divide between Democrats and Republicans, the right and the left, is accelerating exponentially. And we will see how the current election goes, but more incidents like January 6th are probably coming as people distrust the voting system and who gets elected and how they get elected more and more. We're witnessing this in real time. And these are all the major catalysts that will drive Bitcoin significantly higher. On that note, the presentation is done. Here are some of the books that I would recommend for people to read in order to understand Bitcoin. Some are a little more technical. Some are more about the general use of money and economics. And one is even a children's book. And once again, you can follow me on social media. Everything is under Tone Vays, including the YouTube channel, Twitter, Instagram, and join us at some of the events. Unconfiscatable is an event only about Bitcoin. The Financial Summit is more of an event for finance, traders, and investors. All right, thank you so much for the invite. Hope you guys found this presentation very, very educational. And hopefully I will speak again